how easy it is, O1 or EB1. So hello everyone, today I feel honored to welcome Bob, who is a lawyer in the US, and he will be able to give you the guidance you need as an immigration attorney. You will be able to get answers to all the questions you need related to EB1, EB2 and EB3, because as an Indian, we all know that the time to get green card in the US is around 20 to 100 years. Many people are waiting from years and years, and he will be helping you answer the questions how it is actually possible to reduce that wait time. So hi Bob, can you please introduce yourself?
Yes, thank you. Yes, my name's again Bob Weiss, as you mentioned. I work for Super Visas in the U.S. and I'm the U.S. Immigration Counsel there. I've been with the company about 1 year, but 15 years 15-year career, practicing in all phases of immigration, from family to in-house counsel, and now, of course, with Super Visas.
Very nice. So my first question will be, what do you think about US immigration system as a whole? Because I personally think there's a country-wise limit. So let's say I'm doing a party in my house. I have a rule that only 4 people can come from each house. There might be 20 people in one house, there might be 100 people in one house, or there might be only 2 people in one house. But maximum 4 can come from each house. Same as US is doing to us. So 11,200 people from each country can get green card as employment based every year. So what do you think? Is it fair for everyone, and what do you think about it?
Yes, I mean, right off the bat, I mean, that's the most, one of those hot button topics. Everything you see in the news right now, immigration, and unfortunately, a lot of focus in the U.S. is on the illegal side of things. And what's overlooked many times is that legal immigration process where, to be honest, I think is the system fair? It's hard to say. I think it's as fair as it can be, as it was designed, if that makes sense. So just to give it perspective, the immigration laws that really control those visa allotments we're talking were created in the early 90s. It's been 35 years. So when they created and wrote those rules and laws, they didn't really, I think, factor the impact and the demand from the entire world population, because back then there wasn't as much demand. And so I think it was fair maybe when they put the system in place, but obviously as we can see in practice, that's just not the case. I mean, as you alluded, there are 675,000 immigrant visas split between the family base and the employment base. Right now, I do think there could be some room for some changes, right? Some reform, and maybe not an entire overhaul of the whole system. I think that's way too much to ask from any administration all at once. But could they fix pieces here and there? Absolutely. And just like you said, how you can only have your friends from this house come in for this hour, and then from 11 midnight you can have these friends come over, and then from 1 to 2 these friends come over, and then just like the per year limits, I think because those limits are so restrictive, they don't allow for rollover. The rules don't allow for rollover or carryover from countries who may not use all of their allotment for that year. They just go to waste. And I think that'd be something where it'd be a simple fix. It helps that backlog. It's not going to be a quick fix. It wouldn't fix everything all right away all at once, but it would definitely help if you could give out, instead of 11 or 12,000, 15,000, maybe you can get as many as 50,000, because so many countries would have unused visas available. So I think that'd be something absolutely that can happen.
I can absolutely agree, because currently, as you said, family-based green cards were favored in the past as compared to employment-based visas or employment-based green cards. Because of that, a lot of employees, especially in Silicon Valley or all over in the US, they feel very unstable, because even if they are working for 10 years, 15 years, they only have 2 months to find a job if they lose it. And this is the time of recession. It is very difficult to have any sort of guarantee of stay in the US, even though they have kids who are American, but their parents are still having uncertainty in their career.
I definitely think that you're spot on. I mean, that's one of the biggest frustrations that practitioners we see every day, because I mean, it's good talent. It's good talent. These are good people. These are the type of people you want to welcome to your country, right? And it seems like the United States wants to make it as difficult as possible for those people to reach that finish line. And so that's where I think that feeling of unfairness comes in, because I did everything right. I'm working hard. I'm, giving back to the community. I'm paying taxes, but yet you still say, I have to. I'm not good enough yet. And that's what you feel. You feel not good enough. And that's, I think, a frustration, and where that, feeling of unfairness really, really sinks in.
Yeah, and at the same time, US need those immigrants, because if you think about 20% of the startups in Silicon Valley, in California, are created by immigrants. More than 33% of the people working in California are immigrants in the tech sector. So they are like big proportion, not just in California, but all over the US. So there is a huge need for them. And 75% of the people on H-1B visa are actually Indians. So
absolutely. And what you're seeing is other countries now recognizing that and taking advantage of that. You see the startup visa for Canada becoming a huge selling point to say, hey, don't waste your time in the US, come to Canada. Australia, don't waste your time. We have an online system. We'll welcome you. Come on down here, because they don't want you. And that's a selling point. And it's terrible, because that's those good jobs. These are smart individuals, amazing inventions, amazing opportunities. And they're sadly going elsewhere.
Absolutely agree. Like there was in the last 4 years, there's 80% jump in students choosing Canada for tech, not just for all majors, but especially for tech like computer science, etc. People are choosing heavily Canada over US now. Now let's consider a general situation of a computer science student. Once they graduate, they are on their work authorization, which is OPT EAD, for 1 to 3 years, depending on if it's STEM or not. So after that, when they get H-1B visa, which category they are in? Which category they are put in? EB2 or EB3? And can you please explain what is EB2 and EB3?
Absolutely. The simplest way to think of EB2 and EB3 is a hierarchy, of course. EB1 being the highest, 2 second, 3 obviously third. What I like to say is, think of EB3 as your bachelor's entry-level positions. And then for EB2, you're looking at your master's or maybe a bachelor's and 5 years of experience. So really, you almost want to look at it like a job opportunity and job qualifications. So the very entry-level, I just graduated, I'm getting a position, that's going to be your EB3 qualification. The EB2 is that next level, that experienced employee who's got that advanced degree or that 5 years of experience. And that's related to what the minimum requirements are, because it all ties back to the minimum requirements of the job that person is going to be filling in the U.S. And so when you're talking about an entry level position, that's your EB3. Your EB2 is going to be for those advanced level jobs. That what the government's going to look at is if this was going to any employee, any candidate, it's going to be a job opportunity. Is it going to go to a U.S. person? Is it going to go to an intending immigrant? That's what they're going to compare against, is what those minimum qualifications are. Obviously, those qualifications of the individual will matter down the road, but it really comes back to what's the position? What is this person in the U.S. going to be doing? So it's always tied back to the job.
Got it. And if like an entry-level engineer who has less experience, if they start with EB3, currently it is at a level that the wait time to get green card for an Indian is 150 years. So, yeah.
It seems that way, right?
Yeah. Yeah. So,
yeah, it's 10, 11 years, but these bulletin, again, those fluctuate constantly. You see some ebb and flow, but yeah, those lines are incredibly long. And we're talking realistic. People see 7, 8, 9, 10 years before they can file that green card application. That's just terrible.
Yeah, absolutely. So at this point, many of my friends are asking that, say they start their H1B with EB3. In the middle of the process, can they transfer it to EB2? Let's say they become experienced engineer. Can they do that?
Absolutely. So with the EB3 process, that's something you would work with as an employee, your employer, to have fun. Obviously, you need an employer to back you and sponsor you. A job offer is a requirement. And so if you have an employer who's willing to help you file that green card and that perm, which is that first step in the green card process through that job or that perm labor certification, we call it, if you've got that willing employer, they're going to post that job. They're going to recruit those workers. They're going to see that nobody is as skilled as you for the specific position that they are hiring for. Yes, then great. You got EB3 in your back pocket, and you're in line. Once that perm is filed, you have your priority date, and that's your place in line. And that's your place in line for the life of that application. Even if you switch employers, in most circumstances, you're going to retain that priority date. And so let's say, you're an individual who has that perm, and now it's been, let's say, 5 years. Maybe you went back to school and had that advanced degree. Now you're saying, well, I'm eligible for that EB2 classification. What that means is your either current employer, or maybe you've moved on and had a job opportunity, that current employer would have to file a brand new perm. So even if you stayed at the same employer, they would have to file a new perm application. So they let you, the government makes sure that you have to file the step up. But in the alternative, and while I recommend if you can, always opt for EB2 first. If you qualify, that's going to be the way to go. Again, it does depend on the job offer. I mean, the employer that's sponsoring you for this has to say with a straight face, well, absolutely, Bob, the job we're going to give you requires that you have a master's degree, requires that you have at least 5 years of experience potentially. You can't have an employer say, well, just for this one special time, we're going to say that it does require a 5-year opportunity, because if every other mechanical engineer they hire doesn't require that, then the government is going to follow it. And so if that job does, in fact, qualify for that EB2, fine, go for it, because what's great is, and we actually saw this a few years ago, the EB3 dates advanced faster than the EB2 dates. And so what I did with a lot of my company's employees was we actually downgraded those petitions. We downgraded those petitions to EB3. No new permits needed. So you simply file that second stage I-140, making them eligible immediately if that Friday is current, and then they can file that I-45 and that third step green card process all at once, at least to get the application so that it may not be approved, but obviously at least you have the ED, you have the green card filed. So I always say it's best if you can do that. And in general, historically, EB2 moved faster. So even if you can't get in that window, you can't get that employer to do that for you, in the long run, EB2 is still always going to generally be faster. So yeah, exactly like you're saying, if your employer is going to do that, I'd say jump at it, because perm's going to get you indefinite extensions on that H1B. So if they're willing to, even if it's at EB3 level, that's great, because that's going to provide you security. That's going to provide your family security. It's going to get you indefinite extensions. It's going to move you past that 5th year of your H1, because if you don't get that employer to do that before that 5th anniversary, well, now we can't do it. Now we've got to find plan C and D. So I say absolutely, you can always upgrade, but it does take an employer to file a second perm for you to do that.
Wonderful. So it's a great idea to always keep your application ready for EB3 with employer and send it, because once your I-140, which is an application that says that you are ready to, what does I-140 mean?
So the I-140, and I breezed through that pretty quick. The I-140 is that second step. That's the immigrant visa petition for those employment-based categories. Okay, so that's obviously they have the family. This is the employer-sponsored version. It's just that immigrant visa petition.
I
So it
see.
says there is a valid employment offer. I'm married to this employer based on labor certification.
I see. So once that petition is approved, that means you can actually have unlimited renewals of H1B. You have some sort of stability, and you can have your family, like, they can have dependent visa on H1B. And once you are done with that through EB3, it's a good idea to stay with it. And once you think that you are eligible for EB2, you can transfer it. But for that also, you have to apply for perm again, as you said. And and this year it is difficult because this year there were so many layoffs, and whenever perm is filed, you have to prove that you are irreplaceable. But since in the job market there are so many people who can replace you, so it's hard, right?
Harnor, here is your
In
reminder.
geographic locations,
Jordan's Spanish
obviously,
class.
metropolitan areas, though that'll be impacted.
Harnor,
Obviously,
here is your reminder.
And,
Jordan's Spanish
company,
class.
as we saw on Amazon's always talking about laying off 9,000 employees today. I think I saw on the news. You see that's going to impact more communities, more than others. So you're going to always have that. You're going to have an influx of talent and an influx of people that are able to apply for those jobs. Again, I think it's working with companies like super visas or qualified attorneys that can really help you navigate that. When's the right time to file? Don't just, shotgun approach and say, hey, we're going to do this fast and dirty as we can. Strategy, planning, having that expertise on your side is going to make a world of difference. Especially, as we see. And again, I think it's important to probably mention too that even if you move to a new employer, it's great if you have that approved I-140, but that new employer with that new opportunity that's bringing you on board. I mean, they have to. It's a big commitment. It's a big investment for companies too, and so I think you're seeing a lot of employers. They're a little bit hesitant to pull the trigger right away, which is, again, difficult for that family who just said, I lost my job. Thank you for the opportunity and the job. But now, what's at the end of the road? I mean, so there's so much uncertainty with it. And with the downturns in the economy, obviously, I can't wait till things improve. But obviously, I remember when I first came out of law school, things were booming. Everybody had opportunities. Firms were very, very easy. They were processing 2 months. It was fast. Green cards were taking 6 months. It was unbelievable. And I think we'll get back there. But yeah, I mean, as you said, it's just, there's so much uncertainty. But having that approved I-140, and again, just another, getting off a little bit into a tangent, there are extensions available for people, even if they don't have the I-140 approved, indefinitely. But instead of a 3-year extension, they're going to get a extension, as long as that, of course, is there's some time restrictions on a 5th year eligibility as long as it started early enough. But yes, as long as it's been pending at least a year, maybe it's not approved, you're going to get 1-year extensions on that too. So again, a little more security out there for those people in that situation.
So that security, I didn't get completely. So 1-year security, can you specify what 1-year security is for?
So if the government has not, as long as you file, or I'll back up, as long as your employer files the I-140 prior to your 5th year anniversary on that H-1B, nobody's filed one in the past. This first I-140, first perm, as long as the employer files that before your 5th year anniversary, where you have 1 year of H-1 status left. So on day 366, that thing better be filed and received by the U.S. government. As long as it's been that. Maybe it doesn't get approved in a year, taking forever, taking 19 months, who knows. As long as it's still pending, that individual is going to get 1-year extensions on their H-1B.
Wow.
Until approvals. And then obviously after the approval, you get your 3-year extensions. And so, that's just for those out there who are coming to that 6th year, who are in their 2nd term, maybe, of H-1B. That's when you really need to start talking to the employers, talking to the HR manager and saying, hey, I'm in a situation here. I don't have an I-140. Is this something this company, does? Because not every company sponsors individuals for green cards. And so that's that time. I say right around that, maybe right after that H-1B, the 2nd time it's approved, you're in your 3.5, 4 year mark, that's probably a great time to start thinking about that, because if that employer is not going to, you need to probably as an individual have your plan B in place to maybe look at opportunities out there with employers who do sponsor individuals. Otherwise, at that 6 year mark, you'll either have to find another visa classification to move to, or you'll be returning home.
Yeah, unfortunately. But yeah, but it's a good thing that we should always stay up to date with our years on H1B. So before the fifth anniversary, we should stay up to date. And for that, I also believe that super visas can help you stay on top of your application. And if you also want to get started with your application, you can check out try.supervisas.com/Singh, and you can get to talk to an attorney as well. What I really love about super visas is all of their application is online, because USCIS has also shifted to online, but other attorneys, which I was actually going through, they charge you $4,500 or $5,000, $6,000. But since their application is online, they give you the best price possible. An example could be family-based green card is only $950 with super visas, which could be thousands of dollars more if you go to other attorneys.
So I think you really summarized a lot of that very well. Super visas is an easy to use or a low cost, full service online visa platform. And we want to guide those intending immigrants from visa, visitor visas, student visas, work visas, all the way through that green card and even citizenship. I mean, we want to be a full service. Now, again, we are not a law firm, but I think that's what makes us unique and special. Our programs, our visa services, our attorney prepared, and what we use is our technology to automate those online systems in Canada and the U.S. To keep our costs low, our approval rates high, automating a lot of those processes, making it easy for the user to navigate that process, easy questionnaires, simplify things so that they can avoid those crazy high attorney fees, knowing that their application still was designed by licensed professionals. It's been reviewed by licensed professionals, and we help them submit those. What our software allows us to do is, allows that person to upload documents securely. We try and, I think our main focus is obviously we want to protect our clients, our security, uploading documents, confidential information obviously is private, but we also want to be as transparent and trustworthy with our clients as possible. And so I think that's where we've earned a lot of trust with our applicants, schools, the employers we work with, because I think that's what a lot of companies lose, and where we want to really focus on is being trustworthy, because we're talking tens of thousands of miles, thousands of miles. Individuals are working with us. We're obviously based in the U.S. and Canada. So we want to instill trust every day so that they know they're not getting scammed. They're getting the best service possible, that we treat each application individually and specific to their situation. There's no boilerplate. Everything's customized to them.
Absolutely agree. And super visa is not just limited to US immigration, but also Canadian immigration, and all of the student visas in Canada and immigration process of, becoming PR holder or permanent residence in Canada can also be done through them.
Exactly. And that's a great example of where we can also be a little bit strategic and offer a little bit of an extra level of service to our clients, because if that process isn't working in the U.S., we can provide services in Canada as an alternative. We can do both sides, whereas you're working with an attorney who's licensed in the U.S. and only in the U.S., obviously you're going to have to go find another attorney. You're going to have to find another law firm. You're going to have to do that work. And we have licensed professionals on both sides that can help you through that process.
Awesome. Now here comes the most important question. I've heard about EB1 category. So 1 week ago, I was actually judging hackathon at Georgia Tech. So there people were coming from all over the world to judge the hackathon, and they told me that they can get the green card faster through EB1, and EB1 has 3 categories which can speed up your green card, and you can get it in 1 to 2 years. I saw the priority date, it's within 1 year. So 3 categories are: number one, you have to judge competition like hackathon. Number two is critical role for your job like senior software engineer or like tech lead. And number three was you should have high salary, which is easily possible when you are in tech as well. So after fulfilling these categories, they make it seem like easy that, oh yeah, you can get EB1 or O1. But can you tell the reality of it, how easy it is, O1 or EB1? And explain the differences between O1 and EB1 too.
So I'll go through it pretty high level, try and make it as easy as I can, because it is a very complicated visa classification. But just to start, and put it in perspective, EB1 is the highest level. It's the pinnacle of the EB employment-based, we say EB, but employment-based immigrant visa classification system. EB1 is the highest, 2, 3, 4, 5. And so when you're talking about pinnacle, obviously it must be the most restrictive. And so you did mention three criteria on how to qualify for that system, but there's actually more to it. So there's 3 subsets of the EB1, and I'll go over obviously the EB1A, and then there's EB1B and EB1C even. With what I think would be great for your listeners is we could probably not really talk about EB1C yet, because that's for international managers and executives, but that requires a job opportunity and a job. With EB1A and EB1B, those are self-sponsored options. And so an individual absolutely could have a job opportunity with an employer, and their employer can help them through that process, but you don't have to. But the government says if you're going to do that, you better be pretty special. And so I like to tell people, if you're in that top 4 to 5% in your industry, this might be the absolute right option for you. There are actually, so if you would like to qualify, you can show the government that you've had substantial success, and you have an extraordinary ability in arts, education, business, sciences, and you have to prove that too. And they say, well, how do you prove it? Well, I won a Nobel Prize, or I just won an Oscar or a Pulitzer. Okay, if you have an internationally recognized major award, that's going to qualify you right off the bat. And then what you have to show, because that's not just it. You can't just qualify and say, all right, I'm done. Where's my green card? You have to do that second step of, what are you going to do? What are you bringing to the table? And so that's that second layer. But what you mentioned was actually 3 of the 10 criteria that would otherwise qualify you, should you not, of course, be one of those few individuals who's actually, received crazy international award. And so those 3 criteria you mentioned are absolute. You can receive a lesser known award. There's memberships in prestigious organizations. You can absolutely command a high salary. You can perform a leading or critical role. You can have commercial success with our artistic exhibits. So there are 10 criteria the government lists out. And what you have to do is show that you meet at least 3 of those. That'll get you minimum qualification. Obviously, the more you have, the better. But 3 gets you in the door. And then they'll review that. And if you have 3, then they will say, okay, now what are you going to do? So what's your job? If you have a job offer, fantastic. But if not, what are you going to be doing if we get the green card? So yeah, when you mention those 3, judging, being a judge, international panel, that I think would be, if we're talking about somebody who's maybe working for an employer on an EB2 or EB3, but maybe they on their own have been exploring, entrepreneurial ideas. Maybe they've done research on their own. Maybe they've looked into other things for themselves personally without that employer sponsorship. Absolutely. This is something where Hey, I've been developing these things on the side of my house. I have patents that I've done. Maybe I've written a few books and really, really interested in this subject matter. And I'm a leading expert, and I can show you I'm a leading expert. Then yes, then let's talk and let's get you an application for this because and I would like to touch on a little bit about what you said for each of those because they're commanding a high salary. That's one of the most appealing, I think, for a lot of people because tech industry there are big salaries, but you're compared to the rest of the industry, and so you do have to say I think $150,000 a year. I'm a web developer, but you got to talk to somebody at Super Visas, somebody qualified that says, here's what I see. And we're going to look at the labor and wage statistics for that area. We're going to look and see how do you compare? How do you stack up? And then we'll say, you know what? I think you have a great chance that that criteria. We can meet that. And we've done that with a few of our clients already, specifically on that high salary within that tech industry. It's difficult, because immigration hasn't caught up to the speed of technology by any means. And so the crazy advances, I think, it gives the government chills a little bit. They're hesitant, they pull back because they're moving so fast they can't keep up with all the changes. As far as leading and being in a critical role for those listeners, I think the part that gets missed a lot is that you have to be in that leading or critical role within a distinguished organization. So you can't just create your own company and say, hey, I'm the CEO and I'm leading, and so I should automatically qualify. I wish it was that easy, but unfortunately it's not. It has to be a distinguished organization with some notoriety that does something that's well known, IPOs. As far as I would say, if that's the situation, leading role is not going to be your option. Critical role might be, right? Critical because I am absolutely instrumental into this company's success, and so that's where we would say, let's strategize this. Let's forget this leading role stuff. We don't need that. Let's focus on your critical role, so we can help strategize that. And then judging the work of others and hackathons. This is actually something I just learned. I had no idea these existed. Obviously, I did not work for a tech company prior to joining Super Visas, and so this is all new to me. But I think that's an absolute great opportunity to show, especially you're talking coming to Georgia Tech, judging these hackathons. What's most important to remember about that is what qualifies that person as a judge. What qualifies you as a judge? If anybody could be a judge, it's probably not going to work. But if you have to have, so much acclaim, been published or have multiple apps under your own, that you've already created and done, I would say then maybe you'll be qualified. But it's got to be pretty laid out. You have to be able to document things. The government wants documents. They love paper trails. And so you need to be able to document anything that you're going to say.
Absolutely. I agree. I remember that after that hackathon, the people who judged, they actually asked the organization that we need evidence that we got selected as a judge, and that actually proved that it was related to their field of engineering and they had expertise. And I also agree to you that critical role may seem easy, but it has to be related to your sub-organization and whole organization. Like it might be small for your team. It might the critical role might be big for your team, but it might be small for the company. So it is a very relative term. So you have to work harder towards it, and I will definitely recommend them talking to you through Super Visas, and they can improve on that critical role and fulfill it. Yeah.
And again, like you mentioned, everything always has to tie back to your industry. You can't go do it, and be a coffee connoisseur but be a software developer by trade. It has to be all tied back to what you do, what you know, and what you're an expert at.
Absolutely. My follow-up question will be that I have heard that O1 visa and EB1 are related. Can you explain the differences? Because O1 also has like these 10 categories and you fulfill 3 and then you become selected and then you get green card later. And EB1 is like you have H1B and you speed it up. So what is the difference? I don't know much.
Yeah, so the difference really is one's temporary and one's permanent. That's the biggest the difference. The O1, that's the temporary work visa. Very similar in qualification, very similar in the requirements, but that requires you have a job opportunity. So an employer must file that for you in the U.S., whereas EB1 self-file. The criteria are a little bit different. There's a couple that are missing off of the O1. Most of them are the same. What they do is they split it into two parts. They say O1 is going to be for your outstanding extraordinary ability in the business, arts, sciences. We're going to reserve the artistic stuff under the motion picture and television. So they kind of split it there, and so then they have an additional subset of criteria. But basically, 90% about the same for those criteria. And so, yeah, absolutely. They're very similar programs. I think, forget that. So I'll let, because I know you want to ask the next question.
Yeah. So can you file O1 on your own too, or it's like it has to be through company? Is there O1 category that you can self-petition like EB1?
I would say technically no. You cannot file the O1 as a self-petition like if you can with the I-140. Obviously, you need a company to sponsor them. Now, where people can get pretty creative is how that sponsoring company is organized, how maybe there's some ownership, maybe you own a piece of that company, but obviously, I wouldn't say don't rule it out even if you work at a large multinational company. There are some opportunities where you can be on an H-1B and say, hey, employer, maybe I qualify for this. I created some pretty crucial stuff for the company. Can we talk about this? And they can be on board too. So you don't have to get crazy, strategic and creative on sponsorship, but you do have to have an employer in the U.S. Let's get sponsored.
Got it. So for that reason, I think since EB1 is self-petition, it becomes easier, I believe, for engineers in tech companies as compared to O1. But if you are like starting from the beginning and if you are in a creative field, then O1 is preferred. But for most engineers, I think EB1 is the best way to, to increase the wait time.
I do. I mean, obviously it's always up to that individual's circumstances, because sometimes I think the O1 is more approvable with USCIS. I think it's a little easier to get an O1 approved because it's a temporary, it's temporary. It has an employer that's going to be responsible for that person. I think it's a little bit harder to get those EB1s approved, but obviously they're very similar. So sometimes it's the O1 test the waters. Hey, if I can get an O1 approved, I can get EB1 approved on my own, because maybe the employer's not willing to do that. But there are some advantages for why an employer might want to do an O1. Maybe they don't want to wait for the lottery. So they say, hey, we're not going to file an H-1B on your behalf. Let's just go right to the O1, because we can file anytime we want. We'll get it approved. We can preview a process. You'll be in the U.S. No lottery process. So they're again, up to that individual circumstances. But I do think you're correct. The EB1 for that individual who's in that situation, that might be the best way if they've got it, to speed up that green card process. Awesome.
Thank you so much for your advice. It is very, very helpful, and it actually gives a lot of clarity in my mind that down the line, if I also want to, I'm actually on student visa and I'm getting into H-1B this year. So it gives me a lot of clarity that how I can actually build up my profile. And for all of you watching, you can also get direct guidance from them. And for that, you can go to try.supervisas.com/Singh and get started.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for your time, Bob. It was very nice talking to you.
Nice talking to you too.
Thank you.